So I realized when I walked down, I'm like, I spend most of my time, I don't know why, by this side of the platform. And I have no idea why, but I realized I only came over here once. I found that interesting. I have no idea why, though. So, okay, so we're going to take a little bit of science. So I always like to go forward. It's the teacher. So we started with Megan on the starfish. When the president came up here, we talked a little bit about, which I really appreciated, the vulnerability, on forgiveness, which was a great lead in how we process that, and a great lead into compassion and the capability that we have to drive compassion. And all I really wanted to do in the first session is for us to look at it and say, as communicators, mental health is real. And how we communicate, I wanted you to see some science that supports why and how we communicate actually matters to people. So my question as we come back is any situational conversation a throwaway? Okay, I heard no, so I'm going to go with that answer. I believe that every situation is a moment of impact, and it generates from where we started with trust, personal connection, credibility, learned a new approach. I'm going to look at that. I might know it, but I'm going to look it up when I get home. Personal connection, professional credibility, leading into trust, that those things are so critical for us that every situation is a moment that generates from both trust and truth. You do know and believe when it comes to this next part, and you can put the slide up, please, when it comes up to this critical conversations, which is the second part. So I want to say this about this topic. So you see where it says ICU prevention? I want us to think about critical conversations as a preventative tool before we end up in the ICU. My ICU is the intensive conversation unit. And before we just laugh at that and be like, well, that's clever, we end up there a lot. And number one coaching question that I get from my students, as well as the companies that I'm fortunate to partner with, say, how do I have a tough conversation? And my answer is, I don't know. That's not really my answer. My answer is, I think you're asking me the wrong question. I want to know what happened that led up to this potential tough conversation or critical conversation. So if we don't understand the backdrop on the why, on the story, how can we coach that? Maybe sometimes we have to turn the mirror towards ourselves. And maybe we turn the mirror the other way, or maybe the mirror is looking most of the time at both of us. So do we believe that emotional regulation is important in critical conversations? It will derail you. So I want you to think about emotions in two contexts. Not only the emotion itself, but then the intensity of the emotion. So hold that for a second, because it's not just the emotions. Like, is there a difference if I feel angry as compared to if I feel irate? Would you see a difference here? Yeah. I'll promise you would see a difference. Is there a difference for you? How much self-awareness do you have when your meter goes from 0 to 100 like a lightning rod? Don't answer that. But think about it. When you get into a critical conversation, HR professionals, why is it that we're willing to script and get put on a script for a conversation that's critical when we have HR and legal involved, but yet we find no time to really prepare or script, or generally just hope that we wing it in conversations and communication and hope it doesn't become critical? Why will we do it when we already get to the ICU? Because you're like, well, you have to. You have to protect yourself, you have to protect the company, you have risk, you have liability. We'll do it there. But yet I think in the art of coaching, which is what I do for a living, is that we need to be thinking about the prevention of the critical conversation as much as the critical conversation itself. So I want you just to think about that from a mindset perspective. You all know, and I'm taking a lot of them today, that you only have 1,440 minutes in every day. Who's been out to the redwoods in California? Anyone? Okay, someone right there in the middle table. Right there. How would you describe the redwoods when you're kind of amongst them out in California? Like, for all of us to hear, how would you describe them?
They're breathtaking. They're huge, and it's like you feel so tiny. It's like
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? If you haven't been out there, there is I was fortunate to do a leadership conference at a leadership place. It's a former Bible college. It's called 1440 and Multiversity, and it's phenomenal. But you walk down this long platform, and all of a sudden you see the mother tree. And then I saw this plaque there, and let me read this to you. For more than 1,000 years, the mother tree, elder of this cathedral, and think about this in coaching and critical conversations, has filtered nutrients and wisdom to the younger trees. Intergenerational connection there. Through underground root systems, did we hear systems earlier today? Through underground root systems, she hosts conversations that increase the resilience of her entire community and remind us of our interconnectedness and shared resources. I read that plaque and I was like, and I looked at I'm like, how much of that's happening under the ground that we don't see? She also can fight off fungus and other attacks that are coming into the redwoods. And she sends those signals out to other trees. And it's all in the underground root system. So why do I tell you that? In communication for critical conversations, to protect mental health, how important is it for you to have deep relationships so that when you go through the storm, you don't destroy, but you send signals? And how many times do we get into a critical conversation where we as leaders don't do our jobs? We don't send enough signals until it gets into, the temperature is really hot. And then when we don't control our own emotions, what happens then? Constructive conversation moves to destructive conversation, and we end up in a big problem. And I should have said this at the very beginning. Raise your hand if you are actually in an HR function in your organization. Okay, I should have said this earlier. Thank you for what you do. Your job is really hard. Hiring people, developing people, retaining people, coaching people, putting in all these systems where people are like, I want learning and development. And then you put in this amazing stuff, and then they don't do anything. So isn't it frustrating? It's like, will you do something with that? So hopefully there's a few things you can do when we walk out of here. But I want you to know that every conversation matters, and we only have precious amounts of time every day. So here's the picture I want you to think about the rest of our time together. Bless you. Stoplights. How many times do we blow through stoplights in conversations and we're not even aware of it? If we were in a smaller group, I would have set this up as my second slide in the first presentation where I said, here's what I want you to do. If I communicate something that you either don't understand, or you want clarified, or you just want to have an interesting discussion about how are we looking at trust, throw a red light. Call it. Do you create a climate when people feel a red light before it becomes a critical conversation that they feel so safe that they're like, Aaron, I'm going to call that. I need to call that now because I don't get it. Before it's 3 months later and we have to have the critical conversation. Do you create a climate? And I do believe it's a climate. Dr. Erickson talks about an assessment. We created an assessment as well that looks at the coaching climate that we create with our teams. It took us 2 years to create it and 5 years of research and about 30 years of practice. But I wanted to say, can we measure through our team members, not through us, the climate that we create every day and how we have situational conversations? Because we as communicators blow through red lights. We cautiously maybe, if you watch driving today, like we don't cautiously go through yellow lights. What do? I don't know what your autonomous Teslas do because I don't have one of those fun things. But I don't know if they stop or if they just blow through, because that's their habits too. They blow through red lights, I don't know, or yellow lights. But how many times do you ask people, do we got to have a green light on that? How simple? It's simple, isn't it? But aren't you ever amazed, for most people, I hope it's you, that we abide by traffic signals even when there's no one around, for most of us, at like 3 o'clock in the morning. You're still sitting there. There's nobody within 10 miles. Nobody, but we're going to wait until it turns green. But when it comes to communication, ask your teams when you go back in coaching, how many red lights do you blow over and over and over again? And all of a sudden you get a critical conversation, then you only turn the mirror on them. Just think about it. So here's your exercise for this session. So there are my lights. All right, so I want you to think of this. A cue. What's a cue? I direct children's theater, so that's fun. So a cue is something that happens. Now, that's going to trigger something. I know some people don't like mental health, don't like the word trigger. I'm using trigger in the context of it's going to evoke an emotion. And then what happens in this communication loop? What's at the top? So a moment happens, and it triggers what? A behavior. That behavior causes what? A reaction. Here's the catch, especially in critical conversations. When that reaction comes, do you plan enough ahead of time whether you're going to predict, because you got to predict, and AI probably won't do it for you, as to whether that emotional response is positive, negative, or neutral. And then what happens after that? There's another response. And then there's another cue. And this thing cycles over and over and over. If you read Atomic Habits or things like that, there's always so much great stuff on habits now. But it's our behaviors that form our habits. So here's your reflection for this session. Identify 2 communication habits that you have. This you don't have to share with the team because of time. But I just want you to write it down. And you could take this home and say, hey, as leaders, communicators, before we get into critical conversations, now that we know that we're putting mental health at risk here, which is causing people to not want to be in our companies, like that whole cascade, how aware are you of the communication habits you have? So can I give you an example? I'm an interrupter. Is anyone else an interrupter? Okay, we're irritating, just so you know. So I've been working on this I'm 57 years old, and I've been working on this for literally as long as I've been teaching communication, so maybe a decade or so. Before, I don't think I knew or cared. I just kind of did it. And now, man, this is recorded. My family's going to hear this. When we're at the holidays, we're a family of interrupters. And now what I do, and this is so irritating, I just sit there now. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. And I just watch it happen. And then I think my family's like, what's wrong with you? And we're not even like Italian. And I mean that respectfully to Italians, but like you all like talk at each other and yell at each other, but then you walk away like, hey, I love you, see you later. And it's like, great, it doesn't even care what generation you are. You're just like, it just happens. And there's so much love there because you trust each other and it just kind of happens. So now I'm talking about that. But what communication habits do you have? Are you really great at asking questions? Are you an amazing active listener? If you're an amazing active listener, meaning level 3 listening, where you listen for meaning beyond the words, thank goodness for you. If you have a great listener in your life, is there a bigger blessing than that? It's like amazing to me. I'm like, could you feel that emotional energy? Okay, so self-reflection. Write down 2 communication habits. If you're this type of person, feel free to write down 2 that you're awesome at, if that's you. But challenge yourself. What are 2 communication habits you have? I'll give you just a minute for this, to write down 2 that you have. And then when you leave here, I want you to think about that and how that shows itself when you get into a critical conversation. Yeah, so one would be like interrupting. That's a good example. Or not active listening. Or not asking great questions is a communication habit. Not making great eye contact. If you're in a virtual setting, we have a communication habit. We don't turn the camera on. Fun fact, don't throw anything at me. If you're in a virtual setting, turn your freaking cameras on. You lose like 80 to 90% of your communication effectiveness because you can't pick up on nonverbals. We're 5 years past COVID. Like, turn the cameras on. Sorry. I mean, unless you can't, and then you have to have, but set the culture. I don't care if you have your baseball hat on if we're not talking to clients. If you have your baseball hat on, your sweatshirt, who cares? Unless you're talking to a client. Set the climate where people turn their cameras so we can see each other in the virtual. Those are all examples. Okay, does everyone have one? Here's a communication habit I have. I ask somebody to do something, and I don't give them time actually to process it or do it. Is that you? Let me give you an example, especially how important is this in a critical conversation. Are words your friend, or can words be your enemy? Could be both. Watch this. Ready? This isn't as fun as like Orange Kangaroo in Denmark, but here you go. I haven't had a stroke. It's just 3 seconds. I said it earlier at the beginning, give room. Control your emotions inside critical conversations because you align back to the vision of where you want someone to go. I'll show you this in a minute. Make that a new communication habit. Let things breathe. If you let it breathe to the point where somebody says, almost like the question of, can I have too much compassion? I'm like, do we? Good question, but do we? Just let things breathe. All right, so I don't want you to forget this. Think about those behaviors you have based on those behaviors that have become habits. If you don't observe and watch the reaction of those, you're not aware of the response of those, and it's going to kind of cycle. And so the more as a communication, I want you to be like world-class communicators. That's your world-class coaches. That's your world-class relationship builders. Like those things, keep your eye on this and watch for red lights. All right, I told you I'd show you the other side of this, but I didn't want to build it out because of time, so there it is. Now, since you got it wrong the first time, if we walk into a situation where now we drive care and well-being, you now activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now what happens is our good friends, oxytocin and others, and vasopressin, that all activates. Now what happens to your heart rate? Up or down? Down, generally speaking. Blood pressure can go down. Respiratory system. If this wasn't important, what we're talking about today, why do you think the Aura company is spending so much money on these little rings that some of us are wearing? Or the Apple Watches, why are they putting all this in our health app so you can monitor it and get so depressed because you don't sleep well? Or is it just me? Because what they're trying to get us to do is to recognize that situations like this cause all kinds of physiological responses that can be very damaging to us. So when I first used to teach this, I was always like, I don't know if anybody cares about this stuff. But here's what I would always hear, a lot from HR people. What I care about, though, is I do care, not that yet. I do care about healthy people because they're productive, they show up, they're not absent, and sometimes, you heard it earlier, they're absent, but they're sitting right in their chair. They're more open, flexible. They build the capacity to learn. They feel hopeful, optimistic, and peaceful. Filter communication as positive and supportive, and they look forward to the future. So in this journey we've gone through together today, what do you think I would hope you take away from this? Every situation, whether it's critical or not, we're navigating these cycles. Now, if you're aware of those cycles, you can do something about that. What should you do from an emotional intelligence perspective if you get into it? This is like really simple for all of us, but we don't do it. When you feel like your behavioral response is that the emotion is going to start to win, what can you do? You can breathe. I hear breathe. Is that right? Yeah, the back of the room is talking to me now. We can breathe. We should breathe. I think breathing's important. Meditation is no joke. I have no stock in this company, but I'll give you a tip. There's a company, there's a friend of ours here in Northern Ohio who's a productivity expert. There's a little app for your phone called Brain.fm. Brain.fm. I only tell you that I don't know anybody from the company. I have no sponsorship in the company. And there's other apps that will allow you, but the way that they've actually coded their music, it actually impacts different neural pathways. So if you have ADHD, as an example, mental health, you can actually put it on a high neural frequency. If you don't have ADHD, it will actually give you a headache because of the way they design the music, and it actually will hit. And there's great science behind it if you want to read it. We won't have time to go into that today. But the way they program the music, it will oscillate back and forth for you. And if you go into their Focus app, put it at like a lower or medium kind of neural capacity, you will go into hyper-focus mode really fast. If you need to decompress, there are tools that can help us do it. So I love not only breathing, but that's a great productivity. If you want to and the other thing on productivity here to help us when we get near critical conversations, we have to learn, because we're addicted, I'm an addict, we're addicted to busyness. We have to find times that you block your calendar for breaks. I told a friend of mine, I was like, that's not possible, you don't know how busy I am. And he said, you're not that important. And I was like, well, that's mean. But I looked at my calendar and I still don't do it. It's true. My colleagues know. And I'm gonna get back into that stress cycle again. And then all of a sudden my patience isn't there and the critical conversations are gonna get more frequent and more hurried because of my problem, not their problem. All right, so find your moments, block it, own it. Your company will survive. Productivity experts will show you that it only takes maybe 7 to 13 minutes for you to reset. You put Brain.fm on for 7 to 10 minutes, and they actually recommend that you lay, I don't know if you can do this in your workplace. If you're at home, you can. But if you lay down on your back and just kind of lay flat and just relax and go totally black, close your eyes, put something over your eyes, and just sit there for 7 to 10 minutes, you will get the same rebound effect that you get first thing in the morning. And you can do that through different cycles 2 or 3 times a day, and that's all it takes. It's all it takes. And you will handle critical conversations with more empathy and compassion. Okay, and so this is real. Now, I want you now, we didn't talk about our presentations ahead of time, but I relabeled these as not on the break, but I relabeled the compassion care cycle and the compliance stress cycle at times. My question for you as we go, and I'm gonna show you a little clip to break things up here a little bit. Where are you? How do you balance these in a critical conversation? Sometimes I want to bring a little bit of compliance in, and maybe I intentionally choose that knowing I'm going to activate the analytical network and drive a little cortisol, but at least I made a choice. Sometimes it's no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go in with compassion. Well, first of all, I'll probably lead in with empathy. Just so you know, empathy is actually a social awareness competency in emotional intelligence. It's one of only 2 inside social awareness. We don't put, some scholars do, but we don't put compassion oftentimes as an emotional competency, but I believe it is. I don't know if Dr. Erickson would agree or not, but I believe it is. And so I want you to, because you put that in action, and we can learn and train that. So I want you to know this is here. So I'm going to show you a clip. I'm going to show you 2 now, because the musical theater guy in me. I'm going to take you, and it's my favorite clip. I might stop it about halfway through, just so you'll get the point. But here's the exercise. I want you to watch, I won't even set it up. I want you to watch for the impact, the emotional contagion that happens in a very important meeting and watch the emotional contagion between the person that's singing, so younger generation, the person that wishes they could sing, and then actually the emotional contagion spread to the people around them. This is how powerful emotional contagion is. This is a real case. This clip went viral, so some of you may have seen it. I show it frequently because I think there's some great teaching in here. So watch this. I think I have it queued up right.
To get The Greatest Showman greenlit, we had to get everyone into New York City to hear a read-through, where we'd read through the script and sing it. We needed the Fox executives, we needed Hugh, we needed the producers, and it took 8 months to get everyone in the room. And once we managed to get this date, Hugh calls me the day before and says
that I had just had a skin cancer cut out of my nose. All was fine. I knew you were worried about that. But I had 80 stitches in my nose, and my doctor said, you're not allowed to sing.
I said to Hugh, who have you told? Because you cannot tell anyone, because no one is flying to New York City to hear you not sing a musical.
Which was a good advice. So the next day, everyone arrives and I get there and I explained to everyone why I wasn't singing. I also explained, this was Michael's suggestion, a good one, that I should stand just to be clear to everyone that I will be singing on the day and gesticulate and of course act all the scenes.
And you did, yeah. That's to Hugh's credit, he did that for every single number. He stood up there, he was the great showman until one number.
All right, you get the point? We keep on. No, what happens is, so the singer in me, the one lady starts to riff, and she starts to go a little sharp, and it drives me crazy. So I'm like, I like always stop it there. I used to play it like the full 3.5 minutes. I'm like, that's irritating. But did you see the emotion? All right, now let's play the science back. If you watch those clips, there's like 2 or 3 of them out there that have gone like crazy viral. The young man standing there with the folder that was watching Hugh Jackman. They say that was what's called a green light meeting in Hollywood. So they're going to green light the show or kill it. Big, important conversation, important meeting. All the money people are there. And the young gentleman, they're like, the one that really saved the show was not that moment with Hugh Jackman. It was the moments from the young man that was actually there. And then all of a sudden what happened was when he watched Hugh, who wasn't supposed to sing, did you see the emotion start to move? Analytical network, first he's like, oh my gosh, Hugh's singing. He's watching because something just happened. That behavioral cue happened. He's like, he's not supposed to be singing. And did you see him intently watching him? And then what did Hugh Jackman do? Was he emotionally connected into what they were trying to get across? Did you see his eyes close? If you watched him closely, if you're like, I watched this so many times, but the vein on his neck, actually, you start to see the response of like the energy that he's feeling. And then the person that I really want to be, and if you watch the end of the clip, you see it. Anybody notice the guy kind of in the burgundy shirt in the chorus, like behind the keyboard player? Like that kid starts like bouncing like this, and then by the time he gets to the end, it's like full-blown emotional contagion in the room, and they're going nuts. Anybody notice the keyboard player? This is why I love the younger generation as well. That keyboard player was like 22, 23 years old. Not only did he write a majority of the music for The Greatest Showman, but he also wrote most of the music for La La Land. 20-something. How many boundaries do we put? Forget the critical conversations for a second. How many boundaries do we put because we make so many assumptions about what we can or can't do because we don't understand someone's story? So that picture that's up, everybody get the point of that? Emotional contagion is real. I call it non-scientific, the Tigger or the Eeyore effect. Anybody have any Tiggers in your company? You know, can Tiggers be irritating? I mean, they have a lot of energy, but can they also be like, stop bouncing, man? You know, but how many of you have Eeyores? If you're an Eeyore, don't necessarily admit it now, but do you ever have any Eeyores where they're like, you know, I mean, I'm up here for like 2 hours, right? If I'm like, yeah, I don't really care, and I'm just talking down here the whole time, and you know, how long is it take you to shut down? Like seconds. The poles of reason in psychology, you can't be on either extreme. You have to find how you balance an emotional contagion. What I want to tell you is in critical conversations, oh my gosh, is emotional self-control so important. Another competency that sits inside there is adaptability. If you can't control your emotions, you are not going to be as adaptable in a critical conversation. Now, for some HR pros, you might not want to be adaptable. You might need, I'm not talking about the end of the line conversation. Not all critical conversations are end of the line. Those are a whole nother level of intensity. It's really hard. Just like you saw in was it your internship where you saw somebody get terminated? Should be listening. That's a whole nother level. What an experience for you to see that. It's really hard. If you ever get used to that, whole different conversation. All right, so here's what my research showed, my little bit of research. I am more of a practitioner than I am a scholar, just to be perfectly clear. So I love taking things into practice. But critical conversations, shared visions are so important. Do you remember earlier today I said we have our organizational vision at the top? Our framework for teaching people how to communicate and coach actually looks at it at 3 levels. So the level that I want us to think about here for a green light is the leader, coach, vision, and values. So how well do you know your own values? So when you get into a critical conversation, do you ever process the fact that you might be stepping all over somebody's value, but you never even understand or know their value because you don't know their story? And you just assume that it becomes an event or a moment, but it's actually a ripple of other moments that kind of come together that lead and culminate into this critical conversation. So I'm going to give you one exercise. Now, you don't even have to, these are fun exercises because, you know, dancing's hard, Amanda, just so you know. But I want you to do this, and I know the University of Akron as well as Miami, we do Leading with Purpose. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on the table in front, we both believe so strongly in leadership that the power of values and the beliefs and the personal characteristics that you carry in with you every day are non-negotiable for us to understand that with our team members. And we don't do, in most cases, a good enough job in this category. So here's what I want you to do. How about that for an eye chart? I'm going to give you a list, but here's what I'm going to do. So this one we're not going to workshop, just so you did the elements of trust. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you just a couple minutes, 3 minutes to be exact. I want you to look at the list of roughly 50. I love it, multi-generational. If you're taking pictures of the slide, I love it, no problem. You can zoom in on it at your table if you can't see them all. Just for you, don't ask me whether or not it has how I show up personally or how I show up professionally. I don't care, it's how you show up. But I want you to pick 10 of those. And I changed the game. I'm going to do it in 2 minutes. Because I don't want you to overthink it. 2 minutes to pick 10 of those values, beliefs, personal characteristics that really mean something to you. And you can only pick 10. Don't cheat and group them. You can do that later. All right, but just pick 10, and then we'll come back. 2 minutes. Please.
I don't have to rank these.
Not yet. You don't have to rank them. Just pick 10. And I'm glad compassion's on this list. I'm adding it as an element. One minute. If you want to add an 11th because you want to circle family and you're going to feel bad if you don't, I'll give it to you. Okay, that's 2 minutes. All right, now you ready? Step 2. You now have 1 minute to narrow it from 10 to 5. Everybody's like, oh, we love change. It's great. 1 minute, pick 5. Okay, now you have 10 seconds to select one. All right, everybody have it? Here's what would happen, and we can't do this in a room this large. Well, I mean, we could at our tables. Can you imagine the conversations, because I do this all the time. Can you imagine if we just took the next 30 minutes and you shared your values, why you selected those values, just like you did the elements, and the story behind those values. Remember when I had you close your eyes and like pick a person that you thought of, and then we layered in those impact people along your journey, and then I had you lead all the way to why do you do what you do, not what you do. Why you do what you do. Do you as a leader understand the why? And I know some of you might be like, well, I work in this type of setting and they're not worried about the why, it's just the what, and they come to job and they punch the clock and that's what they do. I don't buy it. I think the relationship depth matters no matter what industry you're in. It matters. It matters. I don't think it matters in what socioeconomic status you come from or where you desire to go. People matter. And I'm going to tell you that this exercise, I'm embarrassed to tell you that 25 years of running a company or being a part of a management team, I never did this once with a team. And how embarrassing is it that I had to go to a doctorate program at 47 years old to realize that the power of values. And now it's a non-negotiable. Because I want to know the values, I want to know their story, and I'm going to get it early in the game. Not to manipulate someone, but to show them that I actually care about them. And I understand their story so that when something happens in a critical conversation, I'm mindful of the values. We'll actually do this exercise, and I put them on a Google sheet, and we have the top 5 values for every team member that works on my team. Our leadership students at Miami, when they come into our center, we do this exactly with them. So what can you take away from this? Go back to where we were with shared vision. What you can do with this is you can carry this back and give them that. There's values exercises all over the place. You could even go to AI and be like, give me 50 values and take it to your team. Like, man, I want to have a values conversation. Some of you might be like, I don't have time for that. Yes, you do. 1,440 minutes in a day to try to prevent critical conversations because we understand each other more becomes a non-negotiable. Just to close this section out, shared vision. There's so much more in that, but it gets right to the title of this program, which is purpose. When we get into purpose, we have power. Personal purpose as well as purpose for their role. I want to encourage you to do that. And if you're in your chair going, that's warm and fuzzy, man. Why do you do it at the organizational level, but you won't do it at the team member level? Tell me that. Why will you show that to the outside world, but you won't do it on the inside world? Do it, please. So here's the embarrassing part. Last part, embarrassing. Might as well show you some vulnerability since I colored it white on the slide. I had to do this exercise in my doctoral program where we had to go keep somebody in a positive emotional framework for an hour. We couldn't know them, had to be an executive, and all they knew going in was there was a doctoral student and they wanted to do an interview for you for an hour, and I know you don't know them, and it has to be in the middle of the day. Analytical network, task-dominant network, you don't know them, so there's no relationship. Your questions actually matter. And so I get introduced to the CHRO of Cintas. And I walk into her office, and she's now a dear, dear friend of mine, so I'm allowed to say this. She had her hair so tight in the bun, I'm like, in my little mind, I'm like, that has to give you a headache, is what I was thinking. But man, she was professional, dressed to the nines, like so well put together, amazing. Like I was like, whoa. She's at her computer, she turns her chair to me, and she says, let's go. And I'm like, this isn't gonna work. So guess what the first question I had to ask her? I'm paraphrasing now, but it was basically, what do you dream about? She turns her chair, that's it. Turns her chair. Remember, the most powerful doesn't have to be the most complex. It's common sense isn't common practice. She turns herself towards the window, and she does this. She goes, and I'm like, uh-oh, in my head. She's like, I don't know the last time anybody's ever asked me that. And what do you think happened next? She started to tell me her story. Not a single piece about her resume, her story. And then her story got kind of deep, but she's sharing. So I had a couple, because I was prepared, I had a couple prompts, and I was so dialed into that conversation, I wanted her to feel that I could feel her, that I saw her. Here's what happened. I get out an hour later. There was one moment where it started to get like almost tears. I'm like, I don't know if that's positive or negative, but there's something happening. And I remember her story like it was yesterday. And so I get to my car, don't judge me for this either, like almost like Mr. Richardson walking in the door, I started to cry. And I'm like, how can I as a leader Remember, I'm almost 50 years old at this point. How can I, as a leader, know more about somebody in 1 hour than people that have worked for me for 5 years? And I'm like, because I don't know that I said I cared, but I didn't know that I really cared. And when I'm under stress, leading to critical conversations, that happens even more. So I only tell you that because shared vision for us, I saw it in my research, it's connected to relational climate, and it's non-negotiable at a deeper level. I want someone's story, but I never push them farther than what they're willing to tell me because it's not a moment or an exercise, it's a process inside a complex system. And so I want to earn that trust over time as best I can. And when I get really busy, my colleagues down here will tell you, I still blow it. And I teach this stuff. So get shared vision at a deeper level. It will help you when you get to critical conversations because you'll know what they value. And you're going to do it with compassion. That's an act. Even when you have to give them the hardest conversation. Does that resonate with everyone? All right, so there's a second piece of this that I want you to think about. So we're back to the lens. That's not a tire. I had somebody say to me once, that looks like a tire. It's a lens or a scope or whatever. It's a lens. All right, but I want you to look at this one now. I want to point out one. Because I want you, 3 things I want you to take away from this in critical conversations. Have a shared vision first, number 1. Number 2, clearly identify the standards of excellence that are critical. Now I'm going relational to transactional. Understand the standards of excellence that you hold them accountable, and you better have held them accountable to that consistently before you get in the critical conversation, or it might just be a you issue, not a them issue. Never thought in a million years when we created this framework coming out of my program, never thought in a million years companies would ever want me to work standards of excellence. Until a head of a $2 billion business unit grabbed me by the arm after a 2-day training, and he said, and he got that look on his face like he was mad at me like the whole second day, and I'm like, I don't even know what I did. But he grabbed my arm and he said, we don't have standards of excellence. I said, what do you mean you don't have standards of excellence? Do you run a $2 billion business unit? He's like, no, we don't. Not that's clear. So I said, well, what's a standard? Mike Krzyzewski, I got to throw musical theater and coaching in here somewhere, but Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, Josh, my colleague of mine down here, gave me a book to read. He talks about standards relative to non-negotiables. They're lived and they never go unspoken. And as much as we all probably up here don't like Mike Tomlin of the Steelers, what does Mike Tomlin say? The standard is the standard. Almost 19 years of never having a losing season. That's sustained performance whether we like them or not. And so, but he says, so standards actually matter. So let me just give you, I'm not going to show it to you because we don't have time to exercise this, but I want to give you 3 things you can take away. If you clearly want to define a standard, I want you to first design for the role, your role or your department, what are the 3 to 5 categories of excellence that are most critical? Don't give me 10, just 3 to 5 that are most critical for your team to thrive and flourish. Because if those are clear, you're gonna prevent more critical conversations. Once you have the categories of excellence, and AI is perfect for this if you give it a good prompt, it'll run you through the categories of excellence and you can modify. Then under each category, say give me 3 to 5 standards of excellence, non-negotiables, must live by, that I can then measure through a KPI, key performance indicator, and then attach them to goals. Don't bypass this part. Categories of excellence, standards, KPIs, goals. It will give clarity. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Now imagine before a critical conversation, so we prevent the ICU, we have deep shared vision, action, put it into action, and we're really tightly aligned to the mission. I don't do a lot of corporate strategy work, so the top part of that circle, but you know it when your strategy is a little bit broken or you're not executing at a high level, but I am a huge fan of strengths. I'm certified in Gallup Strengths. I love Gallup Strengths. I don't do as much personality work. That's fine. It's important. I don't do that work so much myself, but I love strengths, understanding how we bring our influencing themes and how we bring our relationship themes and our executing and strategic themes to the table. Man, you do this, and you align that with shared vision, powerful things happen. And you avoid some of those critical conversations. All right, so I want to take you to the last piece here. And this is the power of situational conversations. And you're going to see this, and you're going to be like, well, that's not very complicated. I didn't want something complicated when I came out of school. I wanted something people could use. And there are great coaching frameworks out there, and if you have one, man, keep using it. Keep helping people intentionally use it. I never had one. And I never had one that connected to why through some of the science. So shared vision, I can support through research. The power of standards and accountability, I can support through role clarity that drives engagement, productivity, and performance. When it comes to this, we call these in our team the 6 Ps. And I'm going to focus on, I'm going to build the 6 of them, but I'm only going to hit on one for a second, because this is what I want you leaving here with. So here's your takeaways. Can you imagine you go back to your team, and they're going to be like, what workshop did you just go to? All right, like, what's wrong with you today? Are you sick? But if you go back and you say, let's talk about trust, let's talk about what you value and go deeper, so we go and build that over time, and then you create really clear standards. Now you're about to go into a critical conversation, and the one that I have boxed is the word perspective. You want to know why we put perspective in there? Because I got a little tired. I'm kind of an academic now, kind of not. I don't know what I am. I'm confused. But one of the things that I got tired of is everybody created these frameworks in their garage, and I'm like, they're based on what? Based on what? So the scholar in me was like, show me data that supports why you put things in the place you put them in, supported by good theory that we can then put into action. That's what Case taught me. So now what's the first P? What's this whole conference about? Purpose. Purpose. Purpose, in my eyes, has a duality of function. I want to understand your personal purpose and the purpose of the conversation. Where do we lose time? I thought we were going to talk about this in this conversation, and have you ever been in the situation where you start there, and then you're like, why are we talking about these 5 things? And then all of a sudden there's no plan, which is step 3 in that thing. Plan and path are together because I didn't have room for another box. No, I'm kidding. If you have a great plan, you can measure whether you're on or off the path. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But here's what I've found in over 4,000 coaching scenarios over the past 3 years. We do not have a clear purpose oftentimes, and when you get into a critical conversation, you're in big trouble. You have to be, HR people, we know this, right? We have to be focused on stay on the path for that critical conversation to protect everything that's about to happen if it's really critical, but be really clear on the purpose, but don't do it in a way that you're like, you just blow somebody up. I don't believe that's necessary. That's number one. The second thing is, now this goes right back to Dr. Erickson's presentation and what Megan started, and she didn't even know this is what she was starting with. Why the starfish is so important is perspective. You want to downregulate emotion? Challenge yourself and even document it. What do I think their perspective is coming into the conversation? And if you give that to them enough intentionally, can you imagine a day if you walked into a critical conversation like, I know, you're going to ask me about my perspective. Has that ever happened to you? Can you imagine how refreshing? And then how refreshing would it be if they said in return, hey, I also want to understand your perspective. Perspective, the reason it's in there is because actually the expanded definition of empathy is not only sensing somebody's feelings, but understanding their perspective. So, which goes to 30 years of research, so all the way back to the mid-90s when Time magazine said emotional intelligence might be the best predictor of success in life, not in business. But why are we, according to research, why are we arguably less emotionally intelligent now than we were 30 years ago when the research first came out? Because it's a soft skill. What's the last quadrant of emotional intelligence? Heartbeat self-awareness. So I have to be aware of how that emotion's affecting my performance. And then it's self-management. How do I manage those emotions? I'm not getting into the competencies because of time. Goes over to social awareness, which is where empathy sits for most scholars, not all, where that sits. And then the last box is what? Does anyone know? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. What's that last box? 30 years. HR people, what's the last box? Say it again. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, that's like 3 answers you've given me today. I'm almost going to make you move to the front. Yeah, no, great job. Yeah, awesome. It's relationship management. I call it the kitchen sink of emotional intelligence because it's like everything is in there. Inspirational leadership, influence, conflict management, all those things are in there. But man, if you have to understand that the other 3 feed to what? They feed to relationship management. We as HR professionals have to help people understand that with more impact before they get into a critical conversation, or you don't prevent it. So why will we accept, well, we actually don't in this country totally accept preventative medicine. We're like, oh, well, we don't change until the pain becomes so great that then we change. That comes from Henry Cloud. That's when we change. It's too late. It's too late. So to summarize here, and I'm going to be coming up on time, because we have questions at 11:45, right? All right, so I'm going to show you just a couple things more as we start to wrap up, but I want you to take 3 things away, because that's pretty much all we have capacity for anyway. Number 1, from this section, before we get to a critical conversation, is have a deeper shared vision at the team member leader level. You have to figure out the organizational level. Align to the mission, have very, very clear standards. If you can't rattle them off for your department or your function or your role, go deeper. Go deeper. If I never see you again, and it's been lovely being with you, but if I never see you again, do standards deeper. And then number 3, train your teams to see things from other people's perspective, especially when the pressure gets on, because they're going to move into the stress cycle, not the compassion cycle. I'm trying to put the pieces together. And then the bottom 3, how you measure it, how we identify problems, that's a whole different thing. Risk of loss, all that good stuff is sitting in there. And then here's one last thing I'll leave you with for this, before I kind of move to the end here. I'm going to show you just this last piece of science. So stare at that for a second while I tell you this. Last little nugget for you, goals. We were talking about this as a team at dinner last night. Goals are extremely important, G-O-A-L-S. But why do you think it's important for your leaders to know that don't coach the goal, coach the plan? How many times have you seen leaders, and I ran sales teams for years, so believe me, I fell prey to this all the time, where we knew the goal's there, it's important, but we coach the goal. We don't coach the plan, and when we get under pressure, what happens? We start pounding the goal. Like, we're missing forecast, so you gotta do this, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do this, and all of a sudden, purpose, perspective, and plan go out the window, and we start coaching the goal. The best coaches in the world, they know the goal. They were supposed to win the game. But what they really coach is the plan, and they measure it maniacally. That's progress. They identify problems early, and they redefine what performance is. And then if we happen to lose the game, but we performed well, most of us probably in the room can live with that. But if it extends for long and we keep losing, that becomes more intensity behind that. So that was another been a aha to me, because I realized how much, and I didn't realize it again until my program, how much I actually coach goals. So they're important, don't hear me wrong, just be careful with it. All right, so let me just build this out for you, and then we're gonna close it up. Remember back to our friend, the analytical network? Have you ever done this? You walk in, you got all kinds of data and information, and then all of a sudden you give more information, you start to overflood the analytical network, people start to become skeptical or judgmental, you're pounding it again, and then all of a sudden now, I feel uncertainty or risk or resistance. Does that ever happen? Yeah, it does to all of us, including me, especially when you're under pressure. Remember our friends? Those guys are up. What do you think these guys? Those guys are down, and here was the punchline of this. Remember that not open to new ideas thing from session 1? You actually suppress the other network. So the question that came up, the reason I pulled these literally back up during the break, because one of the questions was, well, how do I navigate this? Well, if that happens there, is anybody this person? Let me just build this really fast for you. Is anyone this person? Or have situational conversations this way where we overdrive the empathic network? We walk in, we're personal, we're relational, we want people to like us. If you're like me, you want people to love you, and it's exhausting. But you have conversations that way, and then all of a sudden you're very comfortable with casual conversation. It's not work for me. It's who I am. I have a lot of relationship themes. And then generally, I hopefully can create goodwill and likability. So answer this, and you can get out of here for lunch. What do you think happens to oxytocin and dopamine in that case? Are they going up or down? Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you. What do you think cortisol and adrenaline, generally speaking, potentially up or down? Okay, great. Now I suppress the other network. So everyone likes me, but they have no urgency to do anything. You have anybody lead that way? Some of you in here lead the other way. And red and green don't mean good or bad. They're just colors. But you lead one way. So the science that we started with all day today, you're welcome for the science. I hope you don't hate it. But all that science from Dr. Erickson to myself, what we're trying to say here, I hope, collectively, is that the best communicators in the world, they don't overdrive one or the other. They do this. They navigate what we call the emotion coaster. And how you start and how you end matters, because you give the right information, you activate the right network, you elevate the right neurochemistry, and you do it in the right order, and you are at a completely different level of coaching and leadership And this is stuff you can do preventatively before you ever get to the critical conversation. But even when you go into the critical conversation, how do you still do that with perspective and compassion, even though you have to give really good news? And I unfortunately had to fire my best friend once. That's a whole other thing about HR people. You're probably like, well, you dummy, you hired your best friend. I know now. But the reality was I had to fire him. And he's still one of my best friends today because I knew in my heart that the right thing to do was that he was better in a different place, and I owed him that. And we're afraid of those things, and then we ended up in critical conversations, and we panic, and we shut things down. And HR, you guys are all really busy then. Okay, so is this important? Okay, teaching tip, don't spend too much time in the rearview mirror, you'll crash the car. All right, so another thing in critical conversations, challenge yourself ahead of it, besides the networks. How much of that's forward-looking versus how much of it's rearview mirror coaching? If we overdrive the rearview, we're going to put them into an analytical mode. If we overdrive the windshield, they're like, we're not giving them the truth. So you got to balance it, just like we do in a car. We look up, we look out, we look forward. We look up, we look out, we look forward. We do that all the time. So here's your checklist. If you want to take a picture of that, feel free. This is what we tried to cover today, and I'm going to end this thing with a video for you. So intentional shared vision. If you don't have a situational conversation roadmap, go get one. I really don't care if it's ours. Just go get one for your leaders so that they have a way to situationally have conversations intentionally. Take the intuitive and make it intentional. Discuss with a coach and mentor, consider conversation wait time. What I mean by that is some conversations you should wait because you're not in control, and other ones you should just have it. Where waiting doesn't help you, but you have to have the discernment, plan questions, be aware of your emotions, intergenerational curiosity. Be curious. Be curious. Stop judging people. When you get into a conversation, critical conversation, you can still be curious. Listen more than you talk. That one's for me. Listen more than you talk. Demonstrate empathy, and I didn't have time to change it, but I'm going to now change it to demonstrate empathy and compassion in there. And then the last thing, if you need AI, we can use AI as a coach to help us. Everyone's going to have it in your company, if you don't already, at some point. It can help you, but just because it can produce, actor in me, because it can produce a great script, doesn't mean that you can communicate that script. Use it as a tool, don't use it as the end all be all, but help you run scenarios. There's great coaching frameworks that can do that. So I'm going to close with a video, and I want to leave you with this. Has anyone heard of the musical Labeless? HR people, I hope you love this. So I'll just give you it's perfect. I'll just give you a little story behind this. So Drew and Leah Lachey are in Cincinnati. Drew and Nick Lachey, you might know them, some of us, from 98 Degrees. Drew is a Broadway actor, Spam-A-Lot, Rent, One Dancing with the Stars. There you go, Amanda. And his wife was a Broadway choreographer, and here was the moment they had, and this is for the teachers and all of us. They were going to put a musical on. They moved from California because they wanted to raise their kids back in Cincinnati, where he and Nick grew up and Leah grew up. And so they were going to put a musical on at the School of Performing Arts in Cincinnati. And they couldn't get the right. All of a sudden, they found out the last minute they couldn't get the rights to the musical. So they had to put a musical on like in 60 to 90 days. So they decided to do this exercise. And I'm going to paraphrase this for time, but what they did was they went into their students that day, and they said, I just want you to write on a piece of paper what you're thinking, what you're struggling with, what you would want us to know, and not really knowing and they put them on a little piece of paper, and all the students walked up that day, and they dropped them in a hat. So Leah and Drew went home that night, and they pulled out all these papers, and they saw anxiety, and they saw depression, and they saw suicide, and they saw all these things. And what they realized is that one thing that breaks down for us in communication is we put so many labels on people that the idea for Labeless was born. They're like, what if we took these kids' stories and put music around those stories? It literally gives me goosebumps, probably not you. But anyway, put their stories around these people and create a musical. And they stood up a musical in 90 days. It was just an idea, and it got all this attention. And what was great was the stories were actually the stories of the young people. They just put the music around it, and Drew's a singer-songwriter, so they wrote all this original music. And so if you know, back to Greatest Showman, that process of that's big business to get a show from local all the way to Broadway. The journey, it's been 8 years for them on the journey. And they've gone from a local show to a regional show. Just performed at a convention in Texas with 7,000 teachers. And then from there, they had a stint in Off-Broadway last year, and they just got invited back to Off-Broadway for 2 months this summer. And so I asked permission if I could show you one of the songs. And so this is actually a live video clip from their Off-Broadway performance, and this song is called Hands. And what I want you to know that when it comes to conversations, communication, and even critical conversations, I'm not Allstate, but it's in your hands. And you're professional people that care about people, or you wouldn't be in human capital. And so it matters. So I don't necessarily, this is straight off of a board type of mix. I want you to listen for it, just watch the words, and then we'll have a closing comments, and we'll do questions, and then we'll wrap up, okay? This song is called Hands.
These hands can build, they can destroy. These hands can kill or praise the Lord, to break or bless, defend or damn. We have a choice. We have a chance. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our hands to raise a wall or tear it down, to silence lips, make a sound, to help or hurt, our fellow man. We have a choice. We have a chance. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. So here we are, just look around. The world is ours. We hold it now. Will we give up? Will we give up? Or will we stand? We have a choice. We have a chance. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. It's in our It's in our hands. It's in our hands.
So what I want to leave you with, that gets me every time. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? let's be really honest with each other. The intensity of which we have conversations now are at an unprecedented level. So the intensity of what you believe will drive the consistency of your behavior. But is the intensity in the right spot? I'm very proud of that. That happens to be my daughter that was singing that song. Well, thank you. That wasn't the point. But enough's enough, you know? We as HR professionals, we can do more. And so thank you for what you do. Thank you for having me be a part of this little piece of your journey. I sincerely hope it wasn't too much information, that there's some things you can think about and take back. And I know that you do some of these things amazingly well already. So if you do, that's best in class. Congratulations for what you do and for who you are. So everyone has a story, and it's in your hands. Don't forget it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. We have a couple of questions, more than a couple of questions. Remember, you can use the Slido app to ask questions for Dr. Dan or Dr. Erickson. All right, this is a really good question. How can you convey these elements that you talked about today to a leader who is reluctant to listen and consider others' perspectives due to their belief that they have more knowledge than you that informs their decisions?
That's hard. Because they actually have to care. And so I think that non-academic response I would be say in the real world is like when they think they know better and they don't actually go back to one of those elements of humility. How can you, if you care about them enough, maybe you have to have that hard conversation with them. But go into it saying, I want to understand your perspective of this because here's something maybe I observe, and maybe I'm wrong. But here's something I observe, and I want to know why, and here's the behavior. Don't go after the person, maybe isolate the behavior into the situation. If it's more tangible in an example, and you do that with keep your tone down. Don't go, man, do you believe that you do this? You know, if you go there and you lose that emotional response, what are they going to do? Remember the loop? They're going to react, and they're going to give you a response that you don't want. The other thing is maybe you can get them in a situation that they care about, or somewhere they care. I don't know if it's a golf course or somewhere that they're more disarmed. It's not. Find your moment. Not every moment is right for that kind of stuff. I used to work with a worship director that I knew I couldn't mess with her during rehearsals. It wasn't going to work, you know. But I knew it, so I never tried to do that there. You know, find a moment in time maybe that might help that you can bring up that level of awareness, or ask them if they're aware of that ripple effect. One of the things I love in emotional intelligence is watch the ripple effect of certain situations and see if they're aware of it. But don't put them on the defensive. If you do that, they're going to probably shut down, and that won't get us very far. Dr. Erickson, anything you want to add to that? Aaron, anything you want to add?
Oh, that's great advice. All right, so I'm sure that everyone in this room has felt this. Next question. In those times of very stress-filled corporate environments where teams are lean and the pressure is high, how do you manage yourself and burnout, and how do you manage your team in that environment? Okay,
number one, that's an easy one for me. I don't know if it's right, but it comes to me quick. Number one is I go back to my own values. When I get stressed, one of my core values is adventure. I ride an adventure motorcycle. I love it. I love being out like in the mountains and crossing rivers and doing stupid stuff like that because it's fun. But I need an adventure. If you know me well, I have to get away. And that's where I recharge and do my best thinking. And my wife knows that. I know that. I have to find those moments because when I'm in the game, I've tried to get myself to slow down and I don't. So I know that when I'm in the game, and I work really hard on it, but it's really hard for me. All that productivity stuff, it's really hard. I'm working on it. But I have to get away. So whatever that value is for you, where you recharge and reset, I want you to view it this way. You're not stealing from other people. You're giving them a gift because you're giving yourself a gift first. And that's okay. The work is going to be there. And maybe your team will actually feel it even a little bit more if you said, I trust you to do this, and I'm going to ask you to do this because I'm going away for a day, and you got it. Now, at the team level, I want to go back to standards. When you're under pressure and that situation happens, and you have less resources, think about, Noster had some amazing work done on change management back in 1991 that really led back to action plan. So which is why plan is actually the third step in our framework, not because it was my idea, but because it's just a really good idea and you gotta have it, is go back to the standards relative to what's most important for everybody on the team. Because when you have less resources, what do you have to do? You have to, I think, right? You have to prioritize what's most important. You can't do it all. And then you have to be able to communicate that throughout the different systems levels of the organization, because they might not see it the way you see it. You say, hey, we're only doing A, B, C, and D. We're not doing E, F, and G. And they're like, or we're going to do it, but it's gated here. Go back to the standards to the categories of excellence that you have to do, that are the must-haves, and make that very clear. That's your job as a leader. Make that really clear for people just as a concept, and get this super uber focused, because we know the answer is not always going, yeah, you can have more resources. Go do it. You know, here's more money, more people. It's what we always ask for. But when you don't have the clear standards, you also don't make a good case for that. So go back to standards. And then hold people accountable to the things that matter most, and hold yourself accountable that if you start to spray, oh, I don't need that because somebody else, dripped on you from the Puzzle Palace, and they're like, we need this. Be really careful with that. You got to be the guard. You got to be the shield. That's why leadership and coaching is so hard. It's your job to also protect. And be like, I love it, great idea, but it can't be done now. That's my 2 cents.
Nope, very good advice. All right, here's a neuroscience question.
Uh-oh.
When can willpower play a bigger role in terms of our habits and behaviors? Can we use it to override our current chemical modulation?
If anyone has a response down here, I'm more than open to hear it. So can our will override our skill? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, willpower.
All right, so everyone's heard in management the will and skill thing. Sometimes we don't have the skills, which means we need the resources to upskill that, which is why we have to have priorities. But if you're somebody that can our will, our give a darn factor, not scientific, but can that actually help us in those situations? Of course it can. But if we're running really fast because of will, but we don't have the skills, we're going to have to find balance in that. Because we're running really fast, and then eventually your neurochemistry is going to win. It's going to win, because what happens when you don't have the right resources or the skills? You start to feel anxiety, which comes back to a barrier of change, which comes back to an emotion, which is going to activate your intensity of that emotion. So so can will override it? Yeah, for a little while, but what I might have you do, if you've got that kind of will, we have a young man down here that works for us that has so much will, and he's very accomplished in what he did coming into our organization, but he has all that will. Grab somebody to come along that journey with you that can help you maybe protect the skill level a little bit. Otherwise, if you start to go that fast and you have that will, eventually I think it's going to catch you if you don't have the skills, because you're going to get really frustrated and frustrate other people. I don't know if I answered that right, but that's my thought. Anything else down here? Anybody else have a better idea than that? Feel free to throw it out.
No, that's great. This is a good question. So for all of our newbies in here, so for those people that are new to their team, or maybe they don't necessarily have a voice, how do you advise that they implement some of the tools that they learned today?
Do it for yourself first. We can't get at a deep enough level. Understand. I've always liked to believe in leadership, and I've tried to grow in this over the years myself, because I'm a continuous learner. And so I'm always like, all right, I have to be aware of and understand myself first. So do the homework on you first. Don't worry about everybody else that's on the outside. And then start to build inside out rather than outside in. I'm trying to impress the CEO, or I'm probably trying to impress this person, or I'm trying to impress the department chair of management, or whomever that might be. Start with you. And so what you can do, you can take this, and if you're new to it, and you can have people do it for themselves and model it. And then, but understand why you're doing the things you're doing. Like if you did some of those exercises today, if you're like, why in the world would I try to analyze these elements of trust? And there's 10 more of those, but why would I even do that? You got to understand the why first. Because the why you would do that is you have a higher awareness of how you show up, and then you can try to replicate. And then maybe replicate it, or ask your manager, say, man, I learned some things. that I think would be really cool for us to have a relational climate that's important. Don't downplay we have to get stuff done. We have to do that more transactional environment. We need them both. So you can't live in relationship land all the time, but then say, man, do we have clear enough? I don't have clear enough standards. Ask yourself if you're new, what are the standards for my job? Go take that home. Categories of excellence, standards, KPIs, and just see how clear you understand your job. What's most important, then carry that over to your manager. I found if the manager's worth their weight in salt at all, they'll listen because they're going to appreciate the proactive nature of you doing some self-work, but then attach it to your job. Which is why that's one last thing on this. I didn't cover this, but this is the difference between, according to Daniel Goleman, not me, good emotional intelligence training and crappy. The good emotional intelligence training will actually connect the emotional competencies to the role that you serve. Because in different roles, your ability to be adaptable, as an example, might be very different at a senior executive level than it might be at a new to my role. My ability to handle conflict management might look a little bit different in one role versus the other role. So now think about that, connecting your job, the emotional competency into the skills of the job and then activating it will help you. So I guess my shorter answer is just model it for you first. Find somebody you trust in the organization and see if you can, emotional contagion, see if you can spread it like a little bit of a good virus, through some trusted people. And then last thing, go back and don't assume you don't do, because I know you do some of these things already. Whatever you do in your organization, sometimes it's like research. Do I want to create a new river, or do I want to go into the stream that's already there and I want to add fuel to, I want to add more movement to that water to get it to rush faster? Understand your environment and your climate. Work with your HR partners to be like, man, I did this, or I see this. Do we do this here? Is that part of new hire training? Is that part of whatever? And then figure out what you do there first, and then figure out maybe how that could be added in over time. Never happens in a moment, though.
That's a really great example. All right, a couple more questions here. Can you explain the neuroscience behind positive affirmations and negative affirmations?
Yeah, so positive emotional attractors, negative emotional attractors, that's oftentimes what they're known as. That slide I showed you with that whole cascade, that's what basically happens. But when you do it with authenticity, so if I come in with positive emotions, or a positive affect, it's actually driving an emotional response, which is activating your central nervous system, which is making you more open to learning. Like, I just want you to think about it in that flow, which we need to do sometimes. But if that's the only thing you know and that's all you play, then a lot of that, you need more positive emotional attractors than you do negative emotional attractors. That balance has been shown in research. Gottman's work relative to relationships, I don't remember exactly what it was, maybe 7-to-1, 10-to-1, positive to negative. It was something really high. And you think about how we coach and we pound the analytical network, like we're probably doing that ratio in reverse. Now that was actually in marriage and counseling and that type of work, but in the workplace we've seen it there as well. 3 to 5 to 7-to-1, positive to negative. But you got to do it authentically, understand the situation, and do the flow. But if you're one that just, because you get under stress and you drive that negative, go back to what we learned, and we'll send you the slides if you want them. But you're going to trigger that sympathetic nervous system. You're going to shut down our capacity, or slow down, if not shut down, our capacity to learn. So you got to think about the balance of positive emotion to negative emotion, but also do it with intentionality. Because if I have negative emotion coming in, how long do you think it takes for someone to read that in the room? And I'm going to bet you it's less than 40 seconds. Yeah, I suck at poker, so it's like right here in my face. And I can't mask it. And I'll bring people down in seconds. So you have to have awareness of that balance. Just know that you're impacting their ability to process information and make decisions, and you're not going to get their best ideas. We're back to psychological safety. They won't contribute, which is why the positive over the negative, you got to think about the balance of that. There are times I go in with full-blown negative emotional attraction, and I'm like, I'm going because we got to go there. I still love you, but I got to go there. But sometimes what I'll do also intentionally is I'll call it. All right, here's one takeaway. No magic in leadership, I don't think. Tell people. We were coaching a team one time, and the leader said, hey, when we walk out of here and you learn a process or an approach, tell people what you're doing. Tell them you want to understand their perspective. Tell them that you want to understand their values. Tell them that you're going to need to be more transactional. Stop playing games with people. That's what drives the intensity up. People are smart. Just Isn't it funny? Just be honest. Have the courage to do it, but do it in a way that's not like me just pounding you all the time. But be mindful of the balance.
Great advice. Okay, so our last question is actually a quote that whoever, it was anonymous, it was posted, would like your feedback on this quote. I think it's really interesting. Accountability without relationship is harassment. Relationship without accountability isn't a relationship at all.
What do you think so let me kick it back. What do you think my response to that quote would be? Not just me, but my colleagues. Like all of us here today, we're a team, right? So, we're actually a group, or not a team, but let's just say we were a team. What do you think my response to that would be? Woo, like winning others over, or woo like woo? Oh, so you think I like it? I like it.
Awesome.
That's the shortest response I've given today. Because what's it telling us? It's telling us the relational and transactional are needed. It's telling us standards are needed, but the relationship is needed, and you can't have one without the other, and you have to have them both. Is that new news to anyone? Do you know Aristotle was talking about emotional intelligence like way back when? It's not new. None of this is new. It's like, but can we make it more intentional in what we do in the very little bit of time we have? Last thing I'll leave you with is this. It's a great little sign out at UCLA. It says the John Wooden Center. They call it it's like the Adventure Rental Center or something. And I took a picture of it one day because my value was there and John Wooden was there. But what I realized is we don't own anybody in human capital. We only get them for a season. And so remember when at the very beginning I said think of a name and then please do this, call them if they're still around? How many times when your career is over will you find your name on someone else's list in a positive way? That you made a difference in their journey, because we can show up on the other list. But you show up in a way that say, wow, that person made an impact on my journey for the season that I had them in my path. How cool is that? That's why leadership matters. And that's why it's fun. And if you don't like any of that, you should probably just be happy being an individual contributor and go do it and crush it. Okay.